Episode 82 of Strange Brow Radio. Thanks for getting me up past 81. It's always surreal to read these numbers out loud, so thank you again, Strange Brow Radio. I'm your host, Tobe Johnson, and today we're going to be talking about something that, well, you might be more familiar with than me. I haven't dealt with the incubus or the succubus, but Jay Bronson has, and so has his lady. So we're going to be talking to Jay in a moment about his old hag. But first, this ain't no old hag. This is Feral by Aaron, E-R-Y-N, at Etsy. Get rid of those hags with alchemy sound devices. Give a bang or a rattle or a smudge, why don't you? Or check out a crone stone, and you can do that at Etsy. Aaron is E-R-Y-N. Go on now. Get yourself a post-4th of July present. Celebrate your independence from the hag at Feral by Aaron. All right, we'll be right back, and let's talk about the 4th. We'll be right back. Well, happy belated 4th of July. It goes without saying that the Pacific Northwest has fireworks just like many other places across the United Nations. And these United Nations, not the United Nations. This United Nation, let me put it that way. No little blue helmets here. Where was I? Oh, fireworks. Lots of them out here in the Olympic Peninsula. So much so that I need to digress about how nuts Washington State is with their fireworks. You know, in the little town of Springfield, Oregon, we grew up with little black snake pills that you'd light with your mom's lighter, or we'd have the occasional crazy jack that you'd throw on the ground and it would bloom around and dance in the cul-de-sac. And then we had sparklers. Now, the rebellious ones, the hooligans, ruffians, would go get the bottle rockets, and that was where things differed as far as what was legal and what wasn't. So I grew up in a world of oppressed panic, seeing flying shrapnel come at me in the little cul-de-sac of, may I say, Ranch Corral Drive in Springfield, Oregon. And that's just the way it was. It's completely, utterly frowned upon in Oregon in general to have fireworks from Washington come across the Willamette River, Columbia River Gorge, and make their way south. But everybody and their mother does it, except in my little tiny cul-de-sac world. It just didn't. So I didn't grow up with shrapnel in my face. Now, last night was full-on shock and awe Baghdad explosion to a degree which I guess was a level 5 because of COVID. Had it not been a COVID summer, this would have been a typical level 10, in which case M80s flying 20 feet away from you is no big deal. And nobody's sober. So all I could see was EMTs coming to pick up appendages. So, I'm kind of a risk taker. I don't mind, obviously, going out and risking my biscuit, but this just seemed so unhinged, and I don't even like dogs barking loudly, let alone M80s in my face. So, anyway, I got some good photographs. It took me about 20 minutes to get those, and then we were out of there, and, grabbed a Coors Light and hit the sack about 11:30 at night to the sound of rockets exploding overhead. Now, I've slept underneath F-18s landing on the USS Stennis for a period of 2 years. I've dealt with loud sounds, but last night was just it was a war footing scenario, and things were happening in the sky, on the ground, all around. It just made me a tad bit nervous. So that's how I spent my 4th. I hope you had a better one than I did as far as nearly dying, but it was good beyond that. And so today, our guest, Jay Bronson, Let's talk about him. Actor, comedian, and victim of the hag, the old hag, the succubus, the incubus. What is it? Sleep paralysis. Is that the only explanation? I don't think so. If you haven't seen this Netflix documentary, I told Jay about this, but after this, immediately run out and watch the movie The Nightmare, because this is going to give this conversation context beyond what Jay and his girlfriend are experiencing. Oh, it is a neighborhood problem, as it turns out. So very interesting conversation. We discover some things together as we talk about this. And there's some Bigfoot stuff too in this talk as well. So my conversation in North Carolina with actor, comedian, and experiencer of the hag, Jay Bronson. All right, on the phone with me now is experiencer Jay Bronson. Howdy, Jay.
How's it going, folks? How you
Good.
doing there, Toby?
Good. I'm just having a cup of Trader Joe's iced tea. If anybody ever gets a chance to buy the concentrated mixture from Trader Joe's, it's a 7-to-1 mix-up. It's quite good. And so I'm sitting here, not that I'm looking for a Trader Joe's sponsor, but it's a nice beverage to have when we're talking to Jay out in North Carolina. Am I right?
That's right.
Okay, man. So you reached out to me not more than 48 hours ago, I think it was, and we started to talk about your experiences with sleep paralysis. But before we get into what that's like and what your experiences are like regarding sleep paralysis and these visitors, just tell me a little bit about your walk with grappling with supernatural, paranormal, from beginning to end. Maybe take us through how you grew up and your overall experience with it all.
All right. It always feels weird talking about it the first time, but when you're talking about talking to people about it the first time, they're like looking at you like you're growing a couple antennas out your head, and they're like going, "Oh, wow, okay." But seriously though, I guess growing up, I only had a couple experiences. Never really tied it to anything because you don't really know anything. Remember one time where I felt myself, it just felt like I floated up out of my body. And I looked back at myself and I looked back at myself laying on the bed. And I'm just sitting there going, okay, this is weird. I've never had a dream like this. I think I was about 12, 13 maybe back then. I think I was about 12. So I did that. I had a couple other experiences where I couldn't move, and I just thought, well, maybe I don't know, maybe I pinched a nerve or something, or whatever, because I was going to a chiropractor, and I know they told me about if you press on a nerve or something like that, it'll kind of paralyze you temporarily or something. So I'm like, maybe I was a press on a nerve or something. So I had my mother take me to the chiropractor, snap my neck and crack me or whatever, and I'm like, okay, went on about my business. And then I had the experience with the floating up out of the body and looking back at myself going, okay, weird. And That was quite odd. But there's a couple other experiences beyond that. I mean, do we just uh, elaborate on the other things, or just move forward with it as far as the sleep paralysis?
Well, you could expound a little bit on what the experience of leaving your body was like.
Okay. Well, it just felt like I was looking at like a TV show, or you're looking at a monitor and you're looking at someone like maybe just laying there in bed or whatever, and you're like, okay, well, this is weird. And you see yourself, you know it's you, but you just think you're dreaming. But I could look down there and my eyes were open over there. So I don't know what it was, and then I woke up and then I got up. I just went back in, and I guess whatever it was, however that happened, I just I woke back up and I kind of looked around and went on about my business. But it just felt really odd. It just felt like, I don't know. I can't even explain. It's been so long ago. But
Well, how do you tell the difference, Jay, between, because I've had it happen, at least on one occasion. It's difficult to explain the difference between a dream and this reality or partial reality. Can you hit upon that? What's the difference?
for me, I guess there were other instances, and I'm asleep one night. Me and my girl were sleeping, and she. I remember there was a couple other instances where it felt like something was holding me down, and it just felt weird or whatever. And you keep on hearing about other people talking about a thing called the hag or whatever, and it'll get on your chest and it'll hold you down. And you see the movie like Cat's Eye or whatever, and how that little creature that was trying to suck out the kids, the little girl's soul or whatever, or her life energy, and the cat was saving her life. You like start thinking like that after you see the movie. You're like, oh well, maybe that's some weird stuff like that is happening. But I wasn't coughing or nothing, anything like the movie. It just felt like something was holding me down. So this continued a couple more times, and I don't remember having that thing really happen for a while. That was in South Carolina, about Charleston, and then I can remember maybe once or twice in Myrtle Beach, but nothing really like on a regular basis until I came up here to North Carolina and Durham. So one night I was laying there in bed. I remember my eyes were open. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, about 2:30, and I'm looking over at my girl, and then I felt something because my eyes just popped open. I'm like woke up real quick, and it just felt like something pushed down on me. I'm like, and just like paralyzed me. And then I started going, "Arr!" So I'm trying to talk to my girl and say like, get this thing off of me. So I'm like mumbling because you're pretty much paralyzed. Um, and she looked at me, and I was looking at her. So it's in the dark. She still see me because you got a night light not too far away outside. And she looked right at me, and she was like, she didn't know what to make of it, I guess. And then it finally, I either fought it off or it got off of me. And then whatever it was. And then, um, so she was like, wow, it looks like you were having a nightmare. But it was kind of weird that your eyes were open. I'm like, yeah. I just let it go because I didn't really want to say anything. I'm like, kind of freaked out because you just had a whatever kind of experience and you don't know how to explain it. So I didn't say anything. The next night, it happened to her. So I'm looking at her, eyes are open, and she's going, "Yee." And I'm just like going, it's kind of shocking. And it's about the same time at night. And so I'm like, wow, this is weird. And then so she hopped up out of it or whatever, and she got up, and I'm like going, well, you must have been having a nightmare or two like I was last night, I guess. And she was like, yeah. So this didn't happen for another round. I guess we kind of played it off, whatever. We didn't really talk about it because like, she was kind of scared or whatever. And she was like scared of like little things like snakes or whatever. A little inchworm will get on her and she'll freak out or whatever. So, but that is a whole nother um, realm or whatever of like imagination. Let's say that that happens to you and you feel like you got something holding you down or whatever, and you just you can't explain it and it blows your mind. You don't want to tell anybody because everybody's like looking at you like you're losing your mind or you're on some kind of medication or something, and or not enough medication. So the week and a half went by, and it happened to her again. So this time I can see her eyes open just like last time. So I reached over there and shook her, and she hopped up out of it. So, and I said, "You all right?" And she's like, "Yeah." So we didn't really talk about it. And the next night, I was one of our friends that thinks he's clairvoyant or whatever it is. I'm like, okay, buddy. But maybe he is. But So the next night, it happens to me. So she paid attention this time and she could see my eyes open. So she grabbed me and shook me out of it. And so from that point, we kind of like had a little conversation and we kind of, I guess, know to shake each other out of it. Um, so sometimes I'll be watching TV or whatever, and I want to like be by myself, whatever, just so I can like relax and let her sleep because she's got to go to work. She's a nurse and all that good stuff. And so I'll be watching my little adult cartoons or whatever it is that I do, and just relaxing, going to sleep. And she'll either come upstairs or go downstairs because it'll come and get her. And it's been a couple times. Usually it happens upstairs. I can't explain that. So, and this happened a few more times upstairs, but I'll be downstairs and she'll come downstairs and she'll sleep right there next to me or whatever on the couch or whatever. And then, or I'll be upstairs and she'll pass out sleeping because she gets into work late and she just kind of wants to like have some snacks and go to sleep, or she falls asleep on the recliner. But sometimes it'll, whatever this phenomenon is, will come and bother her and it'll freak her out and she'll come running upstairs. And, but I guess the whole thing was as many times as it happened, it didn't happen downstairs. It happened like upstairs, like 6 or 7 times to her and me. And so we were kind of like, okay, it's upstairs. We'll just go downstairs. But it just felt like a nightmare one time, whatever. I felt like I just felt like I was on the bed and I'm sleeping and I feel something pulling me off the bed and I'm like trying to hold on to the bed or whatever. I'm like, what the H is going on? And this is blowing my mind. Whatever this is, it's crazy. I mean, it just feels like you're being pulled off the bed and you're about to fall off the edge and you're like freaking out. And that's the way I felt. So I can't imagine her. I mean, she's a little bit more, you get a 5 foot tall woman or whatever, and they're tough. And until something like that happens and they don't want to talk about it. But now she talks about it openly with her daughter and stuff like that and her friends. And she's like, oh, hello, visitor, come and visit. And they don't believe it, but they've had little instances where it happens, but they don't really want to talk about it. Everybody's just kind of like, it ain't real. But I just had a nightmare or whatever it is. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. Well, you don't want to talk about it, it's okay. But after having to see you a few more times, you may want to talk about it. So let's see.
Well, now, Jay, let me ask you this regarding the time. Is there, you said that happened around the same time at night. Is there something special about that hour? Are we talking the wee hours of the morning, or what are we talking?
Well, it's usually about 2:20, 2:30 in the morning, about 2:30 in the morning. I can't explain, but it always happens then. It's weird and it's strange. Always about 2:30 in the morning. It doesn't really, I don't know what it is about that time, but it's always about that time.
Now, have you seen anything? Describe what you've seen.
Yeah. So one night, I was laying in bed and I can't remember if my girl was there. Not, I think she was. Maybe no, she wasn't there. So I'm laying there in bed and I'm looking over the edge, and because we got a big bedroom, and then there's a little small lounge chair down into a little smaller room where we got a little closet, and it's got a little fireplace over there to the left and the door going out. So everything was closed. All right, go away. Close the door. My girl's daughter's son. But so there's a closet over there right next to the window. And I'm just looking, and I just happen to be looking at it for some reason. Um, and my eyes popped open, and it just looked like something came out of the closet, a little shadow, like the movie Ghost, or the Harry Potter with a Voldemort was going through the haunted forest or whatever, back and forth like a wraith or whatever that thing is. And I was like looking at it going, that is crazy looking. And then it just kind of went over real quick and came over and like jumped on me and held me down. I'm like going, what the heck is going on? It was blowing my mind. And it was kind of strong then. It was weird. I had never seen nothing like it. It like rubbed on my chest. I'm like going, dude, get off of me. But this time I couldn't shake it off, because usually after about a couple of seconds where I'm like, and I can throw it off. But this time it held me down. And it held me down for like 10 or 15 seconds or whatever. So I don't know what that was, but that was weird. Mm-hmm. And just to see it, but because most of the time you're just laying there and you just feel like something like comes and gets on you and holds you down, or happens to my girl, but I've never been able to see that. I just usually reach over there and shake her or whatever, and vice versa.
Now, do you remember hearing anything, Jay, with this?
Nah, didn't hear a single thing. This thing is quiet as can be, but for whatever reason, my eyes seem to pop open and her eyes seem to pop open about the same time. And I don't know what that is, because I think just before that I'd done some studying, because after experiencing something like that, you kind of want to know what is happening or whatever. Maybe like this phenomenon, you hear like little movies and different YouTube videos about the succubus or whatever, the incubus, the female version of like some kind of like creature that a paranormal creature or some kind of spiritual creature that sucks your soul or feeds on you, and or the Hagz. What I heard it was back in usually a lot of black people talked about it back in high school, or the older black people would talk about it, and they would talk about the Hagz. You wouldn't hear white people talk about it so much, whatever. I guess they were like kind of didn't realize the experience what they're having. So I started studying what it was, and I looked at some videos over and over again, and they were talking about it, and then they come up with the term sleep paralysis. So the doctor or the scientist gave it a technical term, sleep paralysis, and they said it's the state at which your body is just out of the sleep world, or out of your sleep section of your brain and into your waking section. And you get stuck in between there and you cannot move. And then they say, oh, well, you have experiences or whatever, or it's your body, you have stress or whatever. And your mind, I guess, imagines these things that happened or whatever. And it's all kinds of stress and different experiences acting on your body. And you think you're having some kind of, spiritual or some kind of whatever kind of creature out of another, I don't know. It's just
dimension.
Weird.
Right.
Yeah, it could be another dimension or whatever. And it just blows your mind. And because all we know is what we are right here. And no one really talks about the other things, which there could be something else. People talk about ghosts and stuff, but it blows. I don't know.
Is there anything sexual going on with you and these entities?
One time. Remember when I said where the ghost, or it looked like a ghost or whatever it was, it came over, rubbed on my chest, like it was like rubbing on like my chest around my nipple. And I'm like going, dude, what the hell is this? And it started rubbing on my crotch. I'm like, dude, and this thing, whatever it was telling me it could do it what it wanted to, and it held me down, and it just blew.
Well, now hold on a second here. Let's go back to this moment here. So, did it slowly progress into a molestation from an entity that was? Is this a female entity in any form, or is it neutral, or can you tell?
I could not really. All I saw was some little shadow, and it looked like the movie Ghosts or whatever, you know, with Patrick Swayze or whatever, and those little ghosts that came and got the other dude or whatever, his friend that like kind of, and it just came, and I'm like, and it kind of tripped me out. And then it just like grabbed me, held me down. I'm like, and I couldn't move this time, because usually I can like, after a couple seconds, I can fight my way out of it. This time it like, and maybe this is a different type of creature or whatever. Maybe this is something a little more powerful or something, whatever. And I don't know. Maybe our whatever universes are colliding, or whoever knows.
Right. But now you say tripped you out, but you don't say creeped you out. Is it creepy?
It's a little creepy. I mean, because you get a little scared once you, because usually before I could like fight it off after a couple seconds, I can like overpower it and like kind of um, get the signal down to my arm to move and whatever it is. I mean, so I
No,
make sure to close that door over there.
yeah, right. We're going into sensitive areas here. Make sure you deadbolt it.
Yeah. But could you close that door over there? Not gonna happen. All right. Anyway.
Well, you can get
So,
that. I mean, take your time here, but if we can, I do want to dig in a little bit to this moment here because you're describing something that most people would decidedly say is evil or extremely creepy, nightmarish, right? I mean, the documentary Nightmare is called Nightmare for a reason because these black smoke ring wraith type figures here look like they've come straight out of the pits of hell to grab people's souls. But I hear you saying these things are uh, just on the border of being creepy. So have you dealt with them? You deal with them differently, is I guess what I'm getting at.
well, hold on a second. Let me close this door. This is they're making a little bit of noise out there. Hold on. Yeah. So, uh, well, so you really, when something like that happens, you go with the what you know. And I know about the Bible, and these things may, because you study things and you look up things, and other people come up with the conclusion that these are like the demons or whatever, and from the Bible times that were before the flood, and these kind of creatures are still here or whatever, and they're kind of roaming the earth because they lost their physical form or whatever. So you hear about instances like that, and people come up with these conclusions, and it could, I don't know. Um, it's hard to say what they are, and then so you always go with um, maybe that is what is going on, and I just
Well,
uh,
now when this entity though is touching you, I mean it's molesting you to a degree. You could go a step beyond that, I guess, in some cases for other claims. But is this an unwanted feeling, or is it strangely seem appropriate?
yeah. So yeah, I'm not like begging whatever it is. I'm please come and get me or whatever. I got $50.
Right,
Nothing
right.
like
I mean, these
that.
are hard questions, but yeah, I've heard
Uh,
people describe these moments as being like I couldn't help myself, like it just kind of seemed like it was going to happen, and I kind of leaned into it. Is there any of that?
no, it just that was at one time where it did that, and I don't know what exactly that was. Um, but it did. That was basically tell me. I get the point that it is tell me it can do what it wants, and that was the only time that happened. There was a time where I was actually kind of like you're sitting there sleeping or whatever. You kind of wake. You kind of like really tired. So, and I could feel something rub against the top of my feet, and then it felt like three little claws, not scratching, but just went across the bottom of my foot. And I'm like, on. So this freaked me out. I looked over and I thought it was my girl or something, or maybe the cat. And I'm looking at the cat. Cat's right next to me. And the cat hasn't moved. So I hop up, and cat's sleeping fine. So I look over to the edge or whatever and get around the perimeter of the bed. And there's nothing underneath the bed because we got mattresses all the way up, and we got like the bed's 3 foot high. And there's a box spring at the bottom and two mattresses and a memory foam on top. So this thing's almost 3 foot. So there's nothing to hide down below for anybody to play a joke. And there's nowhere else to hide. So I'm looking around. I'm like, someone, my girl isn't home, whatever. The car hasn't arrived. And really kind of freaked me out because it felt like I was more awake at that point, and to have something just like
Hmm.
feel like three little whatever it is go across the bottom of my foot. That was just
Did it feel like three little claws?
well, and not like a cat claws, like probably more of a human hand or whatever, and just like
Hmm.
the kind of right their fingernails across the bottom, not in a harming sense, but more of a just like um, it just felt like just it felt like someone was just like going rubbing their
Right.
hands across the bottom of your feet. Three, it felt like three little fingers, something, whatever. So I'm
Now,
like, all right.
is there any evidence, Jay, of any of this taking place? Are you finding scratches? Are you finding that you've been touched? Do you see bruising marks, different clothing situations happening after you go to bed? What's happening there?
I really haven't investigated that too much. I mean, I haven't really seen that. I do kind of remember looking at my chest and seeing some movement there. I'm like, all right, am I flexing or is that thing holding me down and rubbing on my chest? And I remember seeing that, and that's as much as I saw. And I could have been imagining that. I don't know. I mean, it just, and I'm not on any kind of medication or anything, so maybe I should be. But anyway,
Right,
but
right.
I joke, I joke.
Well, you have to in the wake of all this. What about deterioration of health? And reading while we're talking here about the incubus and succubus, one of the things that they talk about are, I would say victims of this, unwilling participants, especially if it's saying it can do it at once. Show signs of some kind of deterioration of health. Is there anything like that going on?
Well, I was dealing with some issues for about 5 years. I can't even begin to explain that. Um, so I'll just explain it. Seriously, for whatever reason, about 19, no, no, not 19, but 2014, the end of 2014 was like November, right around my birthday. And I started having health issues, and it, uh, I don't know. I'm used to like broken fingers or something, or like a twisted ankle or something, and you're used to healing, and that's what you know, and you're like, okay, this is going to heal. So I started having poor health, and I don't know what the deal was with that. Um, and this continued for about 5 years. You go to the doctor continuously, and you do this however amount of time, and you think by now, and it's like 2014, 2015, 2016. And at this point in time, you think the medical industry would have a hold of what's going on with our bodies and how to fix it, but they're like, nah, I don't know. Here's a Band-Aid and a lollipop and some aspirin. And that's their way out. And the all worst case scenario, they give you some antibiotics or some painkillers. I'm like, doc, I want to be fixed. I don't want any kind of painkillers or antibiotics or all this other garbage. But so you want an actual declaration that you've got this or whatever it is, or stop eating this or whatever it is. But uh, so this continued for about 4 or 5 years, and um, uh, it didn't get better till about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. So
Do you feel like
uh,
it's linked at all to what's been going on?
I had some experiences before that, and I don't know.
Hmm.
I can't explain that. I mean, you always hear
Hmm.
stories like when you're a kid or whatever. Just like when I said I was younger and I had a few experiences, and you see shows and movies, and like kids are more in tune with the whatever it is, or maybe your pineal gland gets covered with whatever it is because I don't know. So you hear all these stories, you don't know what to believe, and you just like throw everything with a grain of salt, and you're just like, yeah, well, I'll be all right. Whatever it is will heal. I'll get better. But for whatever reason, for 5 years, I was sick, and I was dealing with some issues. A lot more stuff happened during that time, actually. Now that you say that, um, that was the majority of all the
Hmm.
moments that these things took place. And now, occasionally, not as much as you used to. Occasionally, it'll happen now. But you're right. I'm glad you pointed that out.
Well, I'm just Wikipediaing, uh, so it's not me. It's just right here on Google. But I've heard this before, even with looking into cryptozoology, and certainly people that are experienced or abductees will talk about health issues, and there's almost like a cryptid curse associated with health or luck in general, bad luck, not so much good luck. These are all things I've never experienced myself, but I've certainly interviewed and talked with friends that feel strongly about this. So it was something to bring up. What about objects around the house or anything that you feel like could be triggering moments? Do you guys have anything that would be causation of an entity maybe hitchhiking into your home?
I don't know. I've heard that before. My friend that said he's clairvoyant or whatever it is, or is in tune. Uh, I've got a brother-in-law, like cousin Eddie from National Lampoon's Vacation or whatever. What's his name?
Right, Uncle
Dennis
Eddie.
Quaid.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like him. It'll blow your mind. I'm like, dude, your cousin Eddie. But uh, but he says he's in tune because I've asked him a couple of questions. Um, because it kind of blows your mind or whatever. He's like, oh, that's universes coming together and you're having experiences from other universes and stuff. I'm like, oh, okay. But I was trying to tell him some more, but he gets to talking or whatever. And he's like, oh, by the way, I got to go by. And
Right.
so you want to expound on it or talk more. Um, I actually went and started doing research on it and look at different videos. And I saw videos where people are having this phenomenon happen, and you hear things like the actual evidence, what is happening with the scientific realm of it or whatever, because they found out 1/3 of the world's population openly admit to this phenomenon happening to them. And you're like 1/3 of the world, all right, that's 2 point whatever billion people or more. And you're like, how is this happening in that many people? And maybe it's happening more, or all of them, and maybe the rest of them are just not so much aware of, they're thinking they're having a nightmare or something like that, and they're just like, oh, okay. But maybe more people, some people are just more in tune with it than others. And or maybe whatever it is,
Hmm.
maybe it's abductees or something or whatever. I mean, because once I started studying it and I started looking at videos, and you hear about this one guy who was happening to him, and he uh, didn't tell his girl because he didn't want to get embarrassed or whatever and feel like her feel like he's nuts or something. So she's sitting there on the couch or whatever, and she's watching, and she said something came out the closet and then it left and then it walked back and went back into the closet. It was a little shadow. And she said that to him. And then he's like, you saw that? And she's like, yeah, I just seen that. And it was creepy. So they talked about that. And then you hear about other things. A brother left or whatever, and he went off to the military or something. And his younger brother moved into the room that he was in. And then he started having experiences and talked to his brother a couple years later. And he said, dude, do you ever have any experiences? And he's like, dude, that happened to you? And sometimes you hear it's tied to a certain section or room or an area. But in I hear there's certain even tribes around the world or entire villages that they give it a certain name because it happens to the entire village or the area, and they just uh, they know they have an idea of like something's happening. So I studied the heck out of this, and I put it on my little YouTube it. I'm working on the car. I call up my neighbor friend. He's a mechanic and former military, and he comes down. And I'm playing the videos of what's going on because I've done watched about 20 hours of whatever it is in different movies or more. And so I've done the research. And he's like, dude, what are you watching? I told him about the whole sleep paralysis thing. And then I get into it because I don't want to like, yeah, I'm looking at the Hag or whatever because the Hag is coming to visit me at night or whatever. And I don't want him to think, dude, my neighbor over here is losing my mind. And I didn't want him to think that. So after a minute, and I said, well, some people refer to this thing as the Hag. And he's like, dude, just want to let you know. I thought he was going to say, I think you're nuts, but you're all right. He said, I just want to let you know that thing right there that you say is happening to you and it's on that TV happens to me at least once every 2 weeks. Sometimes less, but he said sometimes you'll be sitting there sleeping, and then all of a sudden it'll start bothering him, and it won't leave him alone. And then he'll try to go back to sleep, and he's done come to the conclusion. He'll get up, he'll turn on the TV, said, "All right, if you want to keep on bothering me, I guess we're gonna have to sit here together and watch TV, all right?" And then he talks to it, and he starts watching TV until he falls asleep or whatever, or he just goes about his business. But so he has since moved away, but he said that happened to him a bunch of times. But I don't know.
That's an incredible detail. I mean, the fact
Yeah,
is that you may have something that roams around a specific area. I mean, you might have a neighborhood shadow man or something.
yeah. My girl went and talked to one of her friends at work, and uh, so the lady's like, the other nurse was like, "Oh, okay, whatever." Oh, and she was like sitting there going, "Whatever, okay, yeah, yeah, y'all have lost your mind. Y'all on some kind of medication, or y'all been getting smoking the wacky weed or something." And then she was laughing about it and thought it was funny. Well, so a couple of weeks goes by, and they work together. And a couple of weeks goes by, and she comes running back to her and says, "Did you?" I said, "I don't know what happened, but did you put some kind of like voodoo curse on me or something like that? Or if you tell someone about something, you know, like one of those movies, you're passing the buck on to someone, or the passing the spirit." So she said she was asleep about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, 2:30. Um, that something came and started bothering her, and it freaked her out. So at this point in time, after it kept on bothering her, and like she just got up and she wouldn't go back to sleep. She was entirely freaked out, and that's when she came and talked to my girl or whatever, and it was like, you just put some kind of voodoo curse on me by telling me about this. And she couldn't go back to sleep. But I didn't hear about any more instances after that. I don't know if they talked about it or they brought it up or whatever. Maybe some people say, well, if you don't bring it up,
Mm.
it won't happen to you as often, because when you start thinking about it, things start happening. But I don't know, maybe that's the case, maybe not. But that, maybe it's a and that her work is only I don't know where she lives, but the work is only about a mile away, if that. So I don't know. Maybe this area is whatever.
Yeah,
Maybe.
it's really interesting. I mean, it'd be curious to do some history on maybe what you guys are built upon. You know, maybe there's something underneath you that needs to be looked at. But this isn't the end of the mystery with you. You've had some other experiences. Most of what I knew in the beginning of talking to you was having to do with Sasquatch. So, where do we go from here, Jay? What's your experience with Bigfoot?
Bigfoot. So I've got a friend that is he's a beekeeper. So I became a beekeeper because I was dealing with issues with nervous system issues with Lyme, and Lyme affects you. And so found this information how Lyme bee venom affects Lyme. So I'm like, all right, let me become instead of like paying someone or having to try to track someone down to do this, how the bee venom destroys the Lyme. Um, so you get an actual go to a doctor. You hear about like in Chinese culture, and they talk about this, and they've treated different elements or whatever, and you see it on the different TV shows and the doctor shows and stuff, and they talk about it. And so I'm like, all right, well, maybe I'll try that too. So I got to talking with him, and he starts talking about Bigfoot, and it's like, oh well, that's wild. Um, so that is very interesting because I've done like you see so much stuff and you hear about it, and you hear so many people hearing about it too or experiencing it, and then you're like, wow, well, there may be something to it. So my friend showed me some videos of that they actually took whatever they've got images of things that something that seemed to be stalking them. And And that's what got me onto it or whatever. And so I'm like, well, dude, I mean, when's the next time? Because you keep on hearing about the different like phenomenon around like different areas. You hear things about ley lines in different locations or whatever, and there's something maybe tied to this, and maybe like some kind of spiritual realm or something or whatever, or whatever these creatures are, and they may be part of this tied in. I have no clue. Um, until I do further research. I understand you've done some research about it and different people. Um, but once you start studying things and like you start uh, uh, tying things together, because normally you want to connect the dots, right? So I'm supposed to go on a trip sometime soon with them, and that way I can actually experience this, or you never know what happens. You get a new set of eyes on some kind of material or subject, or do some kind of research, and all of a sudden you happen to be there at the right point in time where you see something, or able to videotape it, and it's totally mind blowing. So I don't know, but
Right. And I think because of your, I mean, just personally, I think because of your experiences with sleep paralysis, uh, something, will change for the dynamic with the rest of the group having you along. And I don't know how that will affect your stay, but I imagine they'll notice that to some degree.
could be.
Yeah. Yeah. So is this your first trip out, on an expedition?
Yeah, I guess sometime in the next month and a half, we'll be heading out. It'll be sometime in around Georgia. I can't remember the actual location, but I keep on. I watched a video. I thought it was in North Carolina somewhere, a piece of property, and these older couple owned a location, and I guess they had experiences where they actually said they saw Bigfoot, and they I think some of the property, some things will change, whatever, or sticks on the ground will be shaped a certain way, or the plants or the branches will be twisted. And I'm trying to look for that video. I haven't been able to find it, but I've sat there and watched it. And it's some kind of phenomenon where they go around the property and they've got distortions. It's like some kind of wormhole or something like that. And they're how they appear on camera, or to each other when they look at each other standing in a certain spot, or when they move slightly to the left, it just really changes um, some of the some of our reality changes at that location as far as how we see each other. I mean, it's just like you see yourself get real small or whatever it is, or altered state. And I really try and find that video. I think it's very interesting, and I would like to know the location so I can travel to it and do some research. I'm an actor and comedian, and I do a whole lot more stuff, and I want to actually do um, like a detective, trying to find out more about this and doing research at different locations. I don't know. I figure
Yes. So you're in
I
the
figure it'd be.
entertainment industry. So are you willing to, are you looking at maybe doing a doc about Sasquatch? Are you leaning towards doing your own research behind the camera?
Yeah, I think a documentary would be awesome, because I mean, not just Bigfoot, but all the phenomenon that goes on, and it's there's lots of things out there unexplained, and these incidences continue to happen, and people continue to talk about them, and they all seem pretty similar. And each story about each like type of like different, like the lizard man in South Carolina or whatever, and all those stories were about the same. Just like Bigfoot in different areas, all those stories seem to be about the same. And all the different incidents that have been happening. And I've been hearing there's a lot more things that are happening more recently. I mean, it's just more and more these instances seem to be happening a lot more. And
Right.
so
I
maybe
was
something is about to happen.
right. I was stationed up in North Carolina near Camp Johnson, actually at Camp Johnson there. I believe it was north of Wilmington, North Carolina. And there's a lot of remote territory. And not that I necessarily think you have to have a lot of remote territory for a Sasquatch, but in the case of just looking at it through Newtonian science, and this is a giant relic hominid, there is a lot of habitat for something like that to be happening. So I've not taken a lot of reports out of the East Coast in general, but certainly, it's not without a lack of reports that you can check out online. So, but you're headed to Georgia, and I think there's just as many reports out that way.
Yeah, I guess once you get out in the middle of nowhere, I guess that gives a lot of open space, and who knows? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um, you hear so many different stories about our reality. We could be in a holodeck or whatever it is, but or you watch different movies and it opens up your mind to different things. Whatever you see, different people come up with different ideas, and they take these stories and then they write them down, then they turn it into a movie. And a lot of these movies and things have to deal with people's realities or experiences, and they write them down because they want to be able to tell it. And I really enjoy those, the ones that make you really think. And sometimes they make a lot of sense because they're like, wow, this makes a lot of sense because a lot of these experiences tie into what's going on with what's happening in your life, or may answer questions, or may make sense because it sounds logical. But
Absolutely, no, yeah, you're right on with that. Now, what else do you have for us, Jay? Do you have any UFO experience too? Because you're hitting up on the two pillars. Are you hitting on all three pillars too? Have you had a UFO sighting as well?
well, I don't really think so. So you watch things like the different TV shows that come on or whatever, and I played an actor that was wearing the well, I played a character where I had to wear the tinfoil hat because I kind of like tying things together. And I think logically, I'm like, okay, this is happening, this is happening. Okay, this must be something that is related to it. And then so I talked to my friends or whatever, and they're writers. So we played a little comedy or whatever, and so each person was a different thing. Like the movie the Thing, whatever, with what's his name in it,
Kurt Russell?
Kurt Russell. That was it. When they were out in Alaska or wherever it is, or the
Yeah,
North
my
Pole. I think
favorite
it was
boot, my
Alaska.
favorite movie. Yeah, up north in the North Pole.
Yeah. So they one of the girls played the character of that. I played a tinfoil guy hat or whatever, and we had um, uh, we had another guy that played the professor, and all kinds of different characters. And they kind of took like from each very well-known like characters in different movies, and they kind of tied them together in this movie. And it was fun and naughty, and we just played up our characters, and we had a fun time with it. But getting beyond that, as far as tying that in, uh, well, well, maybe our experiences have something to do with that, because you start seeing things and you hear about different, um, uh, like the TV shows that talk about it now or whatever. And there's so many things that are happening more often. And it could be the fact that we get social media and the news, and or maybe the lack of the news. The news kind of like maybe they're covering up stuff and we don't know about it, and or the government knows stuff and they're not telling us. Because you hear about so many different stories or whatever, and it is blows your mind or whatever. Okay, why don't we know about this, or why isn't anybody talking about this? Or Skinwalker Ranch over in what is it, out west, and the Mr. Bigelow, and all the
Mm-hmm.
different things. And you start looking at things, people like Chuck Meisler and Misler, and he talked about the science of the Bible and the hidden messages in there. and it'll blow your mind what they found in Genesis and the chapters. And then I found L.A. Marzulli, and I think you said you happened to meet him a few times, or you talked with him or interviewed him, and that is really cool. And they talk about the different things that are going on. It blows your mind, because you hear all these stories over time, all these things like these giant skeletons and all these. My mother talked about different things that were in some kind of museums. Well, the museum burned down, all these things disappeared. Well, maybe they took these things away and burned down the museum, whatever, just to make these things disappear, or the different things
Right.
that they used to have, like things at the museum that were kind of hard to explain, and maybe they just used an excuse, burned the place down, took away the stuff, and who knows what we're not being told. But as far as me and like UFOs, I don't know if I've really experienced too much of it. Maybe the experience that I've been having, it could be some kind of a creature or whatever it is, that this is how they visit us or whatever. And maybe we don't see them within their realms, because you hear about, we're only got like, four, we only know about 4 dimensions, right, to what we are. And there's supposed to be, like, I hear there's supposed to be 10 dimensions. So maybe there's dimensions that we can't really understand or see or comprehend, and things are happening. But I don't know, as far as that, I mean, at one time when I was a little kid, about 4 years old, I remember one time we were on vacation. I think it was either Columbia or Orangeburg, something like that. And we're in a hotel. We got out of the pool. Everybody's sitting around watching TV. Had a big family. My mother's took us all down there, wherever we were going for whatever event. So we had one of those, popcorn ceilings, and it had a little shiny stuff that was in the popcorn. And so everybody's watching TV. And I remember this little, and it kind of weirded me out. It looked like this little bolt of lightning, except it was moving slow, and it was about 3 or 4 inches long, and it started at the ceiling, and it just looked like it zigzagged real slow all the way down, and it took about 10 seconds, which seemed like a long time, and it just went zzz, and it just little 3 or 4 inches. It was not connected to anything else, and it just kept on going down real slow until it went to the floor. I was looking at it because I was shocked, and I hopped up, ran over, looked at the floor, and felt around. There was nothing there. It was carpet, and whatever that was, that blew my mind. And I looked at, did you guys see that? Did anybody see that? And everybody's like, what are you talking about? Everybody was too busy watching TV, and they were just, I don't know. But other than that, I mean, it was one other experience that I can really point out. I happened to live on James Island, and I'd always go to the pond, which was just across the way. So I went to the I left my house, and it was about 150 yards of woods, and it was a little trail through the woods. And I get to the edge, and it was a whole clearing. So they cleared out before the pond or whatever about 50 feet. And there was some kind of electrical box or whatever, transformer box that was in the ground. And I seen some white dude walk out, blonde hair. He walked to this box. And on the other side of the box, about another 20 feet, was a little embankment that went down into the little ditch, big ditch that went into the pond. And because we're right near the Piggly Wiggly or whatever it was over there, shopping center. So I seen this dude walk out. I was right at the edge of the woods, and he walked over to the box and walked around it, and then disappeared. And because I'm not seeing anybody walk around that area. I'm walking over to the apartments just so I can do some fishing. So I walk over there, and I walk a little further out. And still look around. The dude disappeared. So I walked around the box, looked down the embankment, looked all over the place. There's nowhere for this dude to go. And it blew my mind. So that's one of the only other instances I can really truly remember that kind of like really shocked me or whatever, because where'd this dude come from? Where did he go? And there's no other place for this guy to hide. And you can't get into the box because it's a transformer, and you get in there and I don't know what, it's got a lock on it, and it's got the whole um, it there's nowhere for the person to go. So where did the guy go? And after a few minutes of me looking around, I gave up and left, but there's nowhere else. There was no hole in the ground. There was no door that opened up where you can go into the box and go into some secret underworld or anything like that. Nothing like that. Because I tried. Seriously, though, I joke. But,
Now,
but
how clearly did you see this dude?
oh, yeah, I looked at him. I just saw them walking over. And it was kind of like a bowl cut haircut or whatever, kind of like a beach guy or whatever. Um, and, and he just walked on
What
over
was he?
to the
What was he?
box.
Hold on a second here. What was he wearing?
He's wearing shorts and like a polo shirt, I think, and shoes, and that was it. I mean, it seemed
Wow.
like, because I lived right near the beach down there. It was probably like 10 miles away was the beach, and he just looked like one of those guys that was from the beach. And he didn't look like he was going surfing or nothing, but just like looked like he was just like lived, I don't know, just that type of persona. But he just happened to walk over to the box, and it's about 3 foot wide by 3 foot wide by about 3 foot tall. And there was nowhere for you to go, and it's about another 20 feet before you get to the embankment. I look all the way around there, whatever. There's nothing, nothing. So that really blew my mind. I mean, I those two things plus whatever the heck's going on with whatever else. Then you kind of think, well, maybe we're in some kind of virtual reality or something like that, or maybe I don't know. As you get older and you start studying things and looking up different videos, you got to go through a whole lot of crap and to get to like the kernel of corn that's stuck in the middle of it sometimes, and you got to study things and or things that make sense. So you hear about things and you're like, okay, well, maybe that's what's happening, or maybe this is what's happening. But I don't know. So it just kind of, there was something else I was going to say. It was kind of related to it, but didn't have anything to do with it. Oh. So this kind of blows my mind, right? So I come from James Island in Charleston, and you know the comedian and the show host Stephen Colbert.
I do.
Yeah. So you hear about all throughout history. There's different things that happen throughout the world, and there's usually two people that the inventions, when inventions or something happens or people have discoveries, there's usually two people it happens to, and usually at the same time on almost opposite sides of the world. So these things kind of blow your mind, or you see different things where you like see like a comedian like Adam Sandler or something like that, or the and it's another comedian with a very similar name as him, whatever, and he kind of popped up at the same time. Well, and you hear people inventing different things like different inventions at the same time. But so I'm over here in Charleston and James Island, so and I I think you hear about who Stephen Colbert is. And so you kept on hearing about him, this and that, all these different instances, whatever. And he's running for president as a joke. And then he talks about he's going to run for South Carolina. That's where he's from. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'm from South Carolina. I thought it was kind of cool. And then later on, a couple of years later, you hear about different things and where he's talking, oh, yeah, I'm from Charleston. I'm like, no way. I said, he's from Charleston. I'm from Charleston. And that blows your mind. And because you kind of got a connection there, you're from the same area, so that's kind of cool. And then, so one day he kept on talking about it, and I can't remember whether he said anything about James Island. So I went and did some research, and come to find out he was from James Island. I'm like, whoa, no way, that's cool. I'm from James Island too. It blew my mind. I'm like, oh, that's pretty close to. He lived probably about a mile and a half away from me. So I started doing research. And comes in out. He has 11 brothers and sisters. with him. And I'm like, wow. I said, that really blew my mind because I have 11 brothers and sisters. And I'm like, I thought, well, what are the chances? But then because he's from Charleston, James Island, got 11 brothers and sisters. He's a comedian and actor. And I'm a comedian and actor. I never knew him before that. And that I think there was a couple other little things that, and it just really, I mean, like, well, what the hell? And we're about the same height, same build, everything. And his right ear's got a little issue with it or whatever. And I think, and my left ear is a little bit different than my right. And so like the earlobe is a little bit different. I'm like, okay, maybe we're kind of like the yin and yang or something like that, but never contacted him.
What's the age difference between you two?
I think it's like 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
I think it's about 6 years.
I mean, in James Island, I'm looking at it, it's super tiny. I mean,
yeah. What are the odds of something like that going to happen? And so what was it? So I was actually the place where that seen that dude or whatever next to the pond, right next to the electrical. On the other side of the pond, me and my I guess my nephew were out there. So we're doing some fishing, and we were fishing at the pond. And there was a dude that was fishing, got kind of long hair. And I walked over and we were fishing. I was talking with him, whatever, and he caught a big bass because that's why I walked over. I was like, "Wow, man, can I have that?" And he's like, "No," and he put the fish back in the pond. And I was like, "Oh, what a jerk!" And then I seen him out there a couple other times, and his name was Stephen. Look, just glasses, just like Stephen Colbert or whatever. And he was like about 5 or 6 years older than me. So I'm thinking maybe that was Stephen because he lived in that same area right there. So, and it could have been that we ran across each other.
He's a right there. Stephen Colbert is a known bass hole. That's what we've learned from this story.
Yeah, so that may be a little tie-in, but
yeah, well, it's a big synchronicity.
It's a shocker. But that's about it as far as phenomenons. I can't really say I've seen anything flying around out there or beyond that. I mean, these things that kind of tie together or whatever, or kind of shock you or blow your mind.
Sure.
I don't know.
Now, let's ask you this here, as far as your acting and your comedic skills here, Jay. Do you have any upcoming projects that you're working on that you want to promote?
So we're working on a project coming up. One of my friends we went through acting class together, and the cat won't leave me alone right now. So we went through acting class together, and we were in a couple commercials together too. And so we got a movie called Max Payne, and it'll be filmed in Wilmington. And so my character, I play a real sweet guy. I mean, so I've got a wife, and I'm like, I'm just a real, I guess, one of them hateful type of persons that talks down to his kid and his wife and is always mentally abusive. So I'm like, I could do that, no problem. But seriously though, I'm a happy-go-lucky guy, but I know how to do these characters. I like the dark characters, which I enjoy these characters because I like the ones that have more layers and are more interesting. I just don't like the good guy that gets everything all the time. I like the characters that have a dark side to them.
And with that, the connection, my outro, my goodbye to Jay Bronson, for some reason, was cut short. But the interview was pretty much over as it was. I just brought up the fact that his cat had wandered into the room, and maybe that was a powerful sign that someone was nearby, and so we made a joke about that. But anyway, sorry about the audio dropping on my end towards the end there. It just did, and there was no way for me to pick it up. So We've had some electronic issues once or twice before here when talking about these things. Not saying that's what it is, but couldn't recover my end of the audio, so moving along. But IMDb, Jay Bronson, very cool name. And so, find out more about him and maybe Stephen Colbert, who I relentlessly called a basshole, which maybe is unfair, but, it's a joke, Stephen. Come on. All right, so Strange Stroll, number 2 in the editing bay. Actually, it's edited. Now it's in the upload bay. So that'll be coming up. How are you going to watch it? What is it, a Strange Stroll? Well, you have to find out. Go into strangebrowradio.com, and it's on the tab. Click it, and it'll tell you what a Strange Stroll is, and you can vote. And people did. Thank you for doing that. You sent me to the abandoned farmhouse, the condemned farmhouse down past Linda Hazard's crazy history. And we talk a little bit about that in the video. But I had a visitor, and I had a possible spirit box conversation or statement of some kind. The only one that I felt was convincing at all. Does it make any sense? No. But it was some kind of statement, and we get into that. So 30 minutes alone, no BS. Check it out. It'll be popping up on YouTube. Subscribe, like, share. All that stuff means a great deal. It helps boost the channel, and eventually I can get some merchandise on there. And if you'd like some Strange Brow Radio merchandise, you could do that. You could go to check out the strangebrowradio.com merch app. It'll take you right into Teespring, and we've got some really, I think, nice, good quality stuff on there. Our logo is, our logo. So if you like it, it's there. It's got the moniker on there. I'll see you in the trees on the back of the T-shirts. If you don't like that, you can just get a plain T-shirt with the plain logo. We're going to be doing some updates to the merch as well here for the fall, so look forward to that. And something's in the mix. These things are, you can't talk about them too much, but there was some filming that happened in relationship to the Al Moon Lab, and we'll see what happens. These things have to get pitched and picked up, blah, blah, blah. So I spent the better part of 7 hours in 80-degree heat sitting, talking about the Al Moon Lab at the Al Moon Lab Wilderness. So we'll see where that goes. No promises. Can't say anything more than the fact that we're working to make something beautiful happen with it all as far as the screen's concerned. And also the book form will be out this fall or winter at the latest. So look forward to that as well. I think that's it for me. Nothing I can think of except tomorrow I'll be running through the woods after 7 o'clock in a Sasquatch costume for another production happening here. So maybe Biggie will make an appearance as well. And then it's off to Montana, to the Montana Vortex. Now, if you don't know Joe Hauser and you don't know the story of Joe's work and his passion, which is his establishment, the Montana Vortex, it's a real conundrum. It's a true puzzle. And I've never been. I'm looking forward to going. So we are. And that's happening this week. So if I put out an episode a little bit late or a little bit early, it'll all be worth it because I'll be throwing some stuff up for the patron members and whatnot and doing interviews. So I'll let you know if I'm running late at all and do like a short little episode beforehand. But busy, just like all of you guys are. Hey, I got my first space helmet, so I don't have to wear one of these stupid masks. I just don't... I feel nothing but congested and CO2 coming back in my lungs. So I bought a space helmet. I think it's a brilliant answer. No one's going to say jack to me because I'll shoot them with my phaser. Go get your own space helmet. Amazon's selling them. They're face shields, but this one's chrome. It's straight, Battlestar Galactica Cylon action. So I'll put some pictures up of that. And that has a lot to do with the next Strange Stroll, which I'll tell you about on the next episode. Be good out there, and of course, I will see you all in the trees.